Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging our sports media brand that you may have been familiar with over the last 22 years here at AM 1570 with Baltimore Positive. We have a new website that will really show off the nearly 300 episodes we now have, many of them sponsored by our friends at Taharka. I busted out the Caramel Crunch because I know how much Don Moeller loves that salted caramel ice cream with the chocolate-covered honeycomb toffee. And the best part is it's like us, made here in Baltimore, serving up award-winning ice cream and social change, made in Baltimore with love. It is Taharka. You can send it to your doorstep, especially where our 5th District is as well. We'll get to that in a moment. But State Fair is where we usually invite guests like David Marks to come down and maybe have a little chicken and waffles, shrimp and grits, whatever tickles our fancy. And we hope to get back to doing that a little bit more often, socially distanced. El Guapo opening across the street in Donsville. Also coming to the Ville is Fadley's. Now, we can enjoy them down at Lexington Market. We can certainly have a crab cake socially distanced and an ice cold beer. I'm working on some of the soups from Damie Hahn down there. You can hear her work at Baltimore Positive as well. They will ship those crab cakes to you from anywhere in the world. It's Fadley's. And, of course, Don's son, Jeff Moeller, my guest in the buyatoyota.com audio vault at WNST, talking a little Orioles baseball and a lot of real estate, buying or selling a home. Things are happening quickly in the marketplace right now. Moeller and Gary on your side. Get the house done, sold, in and out. Don, tell them about it because you're excited about this segment. This reaches to your Baltimore County roots. We are Baltimore Positive, which is city and county, right?
City and county, and we are pleased to have the councilman from the 5th District in Baltimore County. We'll have him describe where that is, Republican Councilman David Marks. And David's been involved in community and public service for a long time. So, David, you're all mic'd up. Welcome to Baltimore Positive.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with both of you, and look forward to talking about some contemporary events affecting Baltimore County.
Great. Well, David, let's just jump right in. You've been involved. You've been interested. I knew you before you were a councilman. I knew you as a community association guy. You're a Gator. You live and breathe Perry Hall. You love Perry Hall.
My son's alma mater, by the way, Dave.
Well,
just
Perry
you know,
Hall?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely, man. Class of 02, my son. Well, I moved out there for my son to go to Perry Hall High School because I was from Dundalk, and but I'll just say this. I get all these other haulers that come up to me with the red cardinal, and they say, oh, my boy, he goes to the Hall. I'm like, yeah, my boy went to the Hall, Perry Hall, So just so you know.
Yeah.
Well, David loves Perry Hall. We'll get into your experience at Perry Hall High, David, and why you're so fond of it. But talk, because I get a sense, and I've always gotten a sense from knowing you, that just public service or community activism, it was sort of in your blood. Tell us about how that came about, and little young David Marks running around Perry Hall, how he got interested in this stuff.
Really start. My dad's been in politics. My dad at the time was a Democrat.
Good man, David. Good man.
Yeah, there you go.
I like
he changed though, but he changed.
Oh, David, you converted him.
But he's and my dad and you, Don, served together on the Board of Appeals.
We did. I loved you, Dad. I love you, Dad.
Yeah, he loved you. Very good relationship. I was a Republican at an early age. Helen Bentley, who was the congresswoman back then, very distinctive personality. She would come to all of our Eagle Scout ceremonies and things in the community. And I worked on her campaign. I also worked in 1990 on Vince Gardina's campaign. And Vince Gardina was my predecessor as a councilman. He was running an uphill campaign for the county council. He was frustrated with development and a lot of other issues. So I got involved in local politics at a very early age. I'm proud to be a Republican. I'm very active in the Republican Party, but at the same time, I've always tried to kind of pick and choose. And so it was not just the Republican Party, but it was also my interest in community activism, making a better community that really pushed me into politics.
Well, David, I want to pick up on that because as part of Baltimore Positive, we do try to have all points of view. And I want to talk about when you say, you were drawn to the Republican Party, it was Mrs. Bentley and others. What was it? Help our listeners understand and we may talk
Well,
about
how
how
old are you, Dave? Just so I have a frame of reference against myself.
I'm 46.
So I'm 52. We're same era. I mean,
Yeah,
I'll be
same
honest
era.
with you, Don. I've never admitted this, and I'll admit this because I know we'll have a lot of Republicans. In the 80s when, like, Family Ties is on and Reagan's running the country and my dad's a Democrat and I'm 15, 16, 17 and Van Halen's all, the bomb and we're going in the second Reagan administration. It was certainly something that I looked at. You know what I mean? Certainly more than I would in the party of Trump this week and watching whatever this thing is this week that we're watching. But, I mean, I would think for anybody whose father is a Democrat, we've all, once you get to be of the age, you think about these things, right? And
Yeah.
certainly something was different for you.
I mean, Reagan really dominated my childhood. I mean, I was in first grade, I think, when he became president, and I was in 11th grade when he left as president. And
Wow.
you're
Okay.
right. He dominated the era. And,
See, I was in 8th grade, and I was coming out of college when, Clinton was coming in, literally.
Yeah. And, Reagan was a transformational leader. I mean, I think many Democrats would say that. And what I liked about Reagan was he had this gravitas. He was a statesman. You always knew where he stood. And he wasn't without his faults. I mean, trust me. But Reagan also knew at critical points in history when he needed to change, when he needed to be flexible. I mean, he helped win the Cold War. He recognized Gorbachev was an opportunity. He seized the moment and he changed history. And so, Reagan really did dominate, my childhood and I think provided me with a lot of my early political leanings.
Well, David, let's pick up on that. And I mean, I'm assuming. See, one of the things Nestor doesn't know, and we'll get into this. The councilman is one of the true pop culture experts.
Yeah.
The councilman loves his pop culture. So my guess is you were a Michael Keaton guy, right? Were you the Michael Keaton in the hallways of Perry Hall High?
Yeah, I was very much so, and I've become more moderate as I've gotten older. And I think a lot of people do that with age. And I think a lot of Democrats moved to the right with age. But yeah, back then I certainly was very hardcore Republican.
So what was it, David? Because I think it helps, and you and I have talked about this stuff offline from time to time. What was it about you have two parties in front of you at that time, and you're a young kid, and your dad's a Dem, and you're trying to figure out what you are. What was it about the Republican Party that drew you to? What were their principles that you were fond of? Said, hey, that's me.
I liked that they were strong on defense. I like the fact that they were good on national security, foreign policy. I like the history of the Republican Party. I mean, we've had some great Republican presidents: Eisenhower, Teddy Roosevelt, Reagan. I think on fiscal issues, I generally prefer a more limited government. And we've strayed from this. I mean, and trust me, Republicans have strayed from this issue of fiscal discipline. Those are the things that attract.
Well, that used to be 1A, right? 1A was we're going to watch the money. That's
we're going to watch the money.
That's what my father talked about in 1976 when he campaigned against Venetoulis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He likes to tell Ted. He likes to tell.
I just give Ted a hard time.
Speak to that issue of fiscal discipline, David.
Making sure we're not overwhelming our small businesses with taxes, making sure we're conscious about regulations, making sure that we see the role of government as spurring free enterprise. And by the way, this was one of Reagan's faults, was the ballooning of the national debt. Now, if you talk to people who would praise Reagan, they will say, hey, look, it helped end the Cold War, but it was one of his faults. And it's one of Trump's faults, quite frankly, too. And even strong Trump supporters will say that. But then they'll say, the Democrats are also going to be ballooning the deficit, right? I mean, either party elected is going to be ballooning the deficit.
Well, I would push back.
I'll say something on the Trump thing. You said, even strong Trump. I haven't heard a strong Trump supporter ever criticize Trump in any way. I mean, like literally, it's fascinating you would say that would be the criticism that a red hat would have of him, because I don't hear many criticisms of him from people in red hats.
Well, Nestor,
anyway.
Let me go, before the councilman jumps in, because you invoked Eisenhower, and that's where we love these conversations that we're having. I heard the other day John Meacham, the historian, share an Eisenhower story that I had never heard, and I think it has some relevance to today. And that was, I've written about the one fact that Meacham alludes to all the time, that there were 34% of the American public that supported McCarthy before the hearings, and after he had been discredited and basically run out of town, still 34% supported McCarthy. They never changed their mind. So that 34%, of which you're not part of, David, have
I
never
wonder
been
what the
part of,
age group of
is
those
not locked
people
in.
were at that point.
Well, we'll have to meet Meacham one time for a crowd.
Well, that would be fascinating to me because to find out how much longer they
Right.
lived, right?
But yeah, yes. But the interesting point was they talked about I don't know if you've ever heard this, David, because you're a student of history and particularly Republican politics, said that there was McCarthy had attacked General Marshall, one of the great leaders of the time, and that there was pressure on Ike to rebuke that attack at the convention, and there was a line in there where he called that out, and his political advisors said to him, I'd take that line out. There's no reason to make that quote unquote 34% angry, and let's not do it. And Meacham said that to his dying day, Ike regretted that decision, that he didn't stand up and call McCarthy out on the attack to General Marshall. Are you familiar with that story, David? You ever heard that?
No, I am familiar with Eisenhower warning of the military industrial complex, right? But yeah, no, not familiar with that story.
So it's impossible, and we're going to get into all the local stuff. I want to talk zoning with you. I want to talk cooperation with the city. I want to talk about why you do this crazy job, because I'll tell you, David, and you and I have talked about this. Being a county councilman is a very, very hard job. It is 24/7. It's hard to make everybody happy all of the time. But before we get into all of the local stuff, as we record this, we're in the midst of the Republican convention. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Tell me how you try to make sense, as you just described yourself as a moderate Republican. How do you try to make sense of the Donald Trump Republican Party versus the Mitt Romney, John McCain, Jeff Flake
All that
Republican
Reagan
Party?
stuff we talked about.
You're a young
Yeah.
guy. Talk to us about how you try to work all that out.
I think the people who support Donald Trump look at two or three key issues. The number one issue for a lot of the folks is the judiciary and the judges. And a lot of Republicans supported him because of the judges he's put in place. I think they like the fact that he's what they see as, quote, stands up for America. And against what they see as, the Hollywood left and people like that. They like the fact that he fights back. I think a lot of people liked his economic record, and we talked about how it's added to the deficit, but we also, there was a good economic record in a lot of other respects in terms of unemployment and the boom that he inherited from Obama that he carried forth. I think they tend to ignore a lot of the other stuff that liberals attack Trump for. And I'll talk privately. People, they say they wish he'd stay off Twitter. They just hate that. They hate the back and forth on Twitter, but they're willing to overlook that because they see two or three issues, and I just outlined them, that are very important to them. And they also don't like some of what they see in the Democratic Party. A lot of people respect and like Joe Biden. They're just concerned about people around Joe Biden. And so that's what they're focusing on.
And and I would, in the sense of fairness, I would push back on, as you know, I would push back on the economic analysis and say not nearly as rosy as that your team would like to paint it. But
I push
that's
back
not
on
what
the
I
people
want.
that say that they wish that he wouldn't be on Twitter, because then what you're basically saying is you wish you didn't know what he really thinks, and what he really thinks is embarrassing. For many people that pull the lever, that you do it despite all that comes with it, and all that comes with it is why I'm in North Carolina and no one's wearing a mask, and I'm saying this is science. This isn't politics. And I think the that's really where we are now. I mean, you could be angry about it a year ago if you're me. Now we all are wearing masks and businesses are shut down because of the lack of belief in science, quite frankly. I mean, the lack of a fundamental education of what a pathogen is and what a plague looks like.
Well, and I appreciate you, David, trying to analyze what it is, because one of the things, and again, you react to this if you have a different take. I mean, you and I were on different sides of the aisle. When I was chief of staff, we interacted a lot because I was working with you through, on behalf of the county executives. And then when I became county executive, we didn't always see eye to eye. But, I mean, I think of many conversations where I would come up to your office or you would come down to my office, and we would try to at least understand where each of us was coming from. Sometimes we were able to get there. Sometimes we don't. But I think people feel that we don't have our leaders doing that. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, the question is why how have we gotten here? I think it started in the 1990s with talk radio, and then I think it's been amplified by social media, by the internet. Don, when we sit down face to face, we can have civil conversations. We've lost that art form in politics of just being able to sit down privately without all the noise that comes from the internet. And I think that's just made things very difficult. People, and I'll go tell you, on both sides of the aisle, Democrats will not vote for a single Republican, and vice versa. Republicans won't vote for a single Democrat. They have just become very hardened, very partisan, and it's because I think of the echo chamber.
No, it is difficult. And I was actually trying to think this morning, David, knowing we were having you on, I was thinking of a number of our conversations. And again, they could have been animated, but I would never describe, and this is, I think, what I yearn for and I want to see more of, is I don't think I would ever describe them as acrimonious. I mean, you and I aren't shrinking violets. We didn't hold back, and we tried to convince the other, but I don't think they were ever acrimonious in our interactions, is the way I recall it. Do you agree with that?
I don't think they were at all. Oh,
right,
yeah,
right,
I completely agree.
David.
And we had heated debates.
Yeah, yes, we did. Yes, we did. We absolutely. But that's that's okay. See, I think, David, that's the problem. And as you know, I have many Republican friends, and you follow me, and many Republican relatives, and I'm fine with arguing tax policy, and I'm fine with arguing where the judiciary should go, and I'm fine arguing a woman's right to choose. Those are legitimate policy discussions. Where I think what Nestor and I struggle with, and what people sometimes don't like when we get feedback that we're saying on the show, is I don't know how I can't get past the decency issue. I can't get past. My mom used to say about folks, our parents always say, rude, crude, and unattractive. And I can't get past rude, crude, and unattractive. And I'd like to think, if I were a lifelong Republican, that I would be with the men and women of the Lincoln Project. Michael Steele's a good friend of yours. You and Michael Steele have a good relationship. Michael Steele yesterday announced he's signing up for the Lincoln Project. Now, again, it's not fair.
He was on with us a month ago and all but
right.
endorsed Biden, literally, right?
And I think they're choosing decency, right? So it's not about policy. It's about decency. So that's my sort of tirade there. But rather than make you go on and defend Donald Trump because you're not Trump's keeper, I want you to describe for folks. We like to give people a little geography lesson.
Sure.
On Baltimore Positive. Tell them where the 5th district of Baltimore County is, because I think in a lot of sense it really represents Baltimore County.
Yeah, so it starts at Charles Street and it goes all the way to the Harford County line. So it includes Towson, little part of Lock Raven Village, Kearney, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Fullerton, and Kingsville. It's a really diverse district, very dynamic. I mean, it's got Towson, which is booming right now, the county seat. It's got older neighborhoods in the center part, and then it's got Perry Hall and Kingsville. Kingsville is a very rural part of the county. Very diverse. The Towson area tends to be more Democratic. Perry Hall area tends to be more Republican. And also the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing parts of the county.
All the places I've been, all the places I had sponsors, all the places I had beers and fun and parks and recs and all of those things. I guess for, all of us at this point, Republican or Democratic, wherever we are, we're all wearing masks. We're all wondering where the end of this is. And all of us who really care about the democratic process and what we do here, we all want to get a vote, right? And the weirdest part is us taking full episodes here for the last 2 weeks just because of the confusion about signing up and registration and where I'm going to go and hearing that they're looking for election judges and all of these different things that are affecting the vote. We need to make sure everyone in the 5th, everywhere else is voting here, right?
Right. Yeah, look, I voted by mail. I didn't have any problems voting by mail. People who vote by mail can rest assured their vote will be counted. Each one of those drop boxes is going to have a security guard there, a video camera system. They will be counted. It is still the safest way to vote. And, I'm all for having as many voting sites in person as we can safely administer. The problem is that many of those election judges are senior citizens, and it becomes a real safety issue for them.
See, David, I am going to get back to zoning because I really want you, because that's been a passion of yours.
Yeah.
And I promise to get off Trump. But I have to say this, David. What you just said in about 45 seconds would have been such a service to the nation had the president. I mean, when this comes out, Nestor's going to take little excerpts and put them on the new website, and you talking about the sanctity and the safety of voting by mail. It's not partisan. You just said voting by mail is safe. There's going to be security. I voted by mail, and
he voted by mail.
That's what I mean.
His family voted by mail.
Voted by mail. So that's where the frustration comes in.
You know what, Don? One of the states that has the most robust voting by mail systems, Utah. Right. Utah. Pretty Republican state.
Pretty Republican. So, I mean, you're talking sense. You're talking the moderate, what I used to call them, whether you call them the Reagan Republicans, the Wall Street Republicans, a bunch of my relatives that fit that. Those are the Republicans I yearn for. And I hope that in a post-Trump era, that those kind of Republicans step forward again and we can have these important policy discussions. But David, one of the things that I want you to talk about, and again, if you're just tuning in, we're with Baltimore County 5th District Republican Councilman David Marks. He's been in office since 2010. Good Lord, David, 10 years. Who'd have thunk it, huh? 10 years. Time flies when you're having fun. But I think one of the things that people really don't understand, one of the most important functions of a county councilman is what they do every 4 years as part of what we call in Baltimore County, the comprehensive zoning process, taking place every 4 years. And as we talk, you all are getting ready to wrap up this 4-year cycle. You're a teacher. You love to teach. Educate our listeners as to what the zoning process is, how it works, and what role you play.
And make it exciting for our Baltimore Positive.
Make it exciting. Yeah, so it's a dry process, unfortunately, but it's important. I mean, it determines whether you have a shopping center or a farm next to you. Once you have the zoning in place, it is very difficult to stop a project. It is a contentious process because the communities many times do not want anything to be built, and private property owners by their own nature probably want the maximum potential to build there. So every 4 years we go through this. I have 79 issues in my district, and we wrap it up tonight. And it's
how many, David? I'm sorry. How many?
I have 79. I have 79.
79. Okay.
79. Yeah.
Is that a lot or a little? Like, is that what is that?
I raised
Sounds
more
like a
last
lot.
time.
I mean,
It
it sounds
sounds
like
like a lot.
it sounds like a lot of pissed off, angry people, and I want this and I want that, and everybody's trying to figure out what That's why we elect y'all, right?
Oh yeah. And trust me, Nestor. I mean, you please very few people.
Right.
Very few people. People will come out of this
Like an
tonight.
umpire, they're always mad at you.
They're always mad at us, and but it's important. We talked about Towson a little bit. Towson is a growing area, and there's a lot of people who yearn for the old Towson. The problem is that if you don't redevelop your older areas, you end up with sprawl. You drive north to Pennsylvania, you immediately know when you hit Shrewsbury, Pennsylvania, because the green area of northern Baltimore County becomes sprawl. And that's what we're trying to avoid in Baltimore County. We have to redevelop the older communities, and that means in places like Towson, you're going to have more development. It's just it's just a way of life.
David, have you evolved? Folks who pay attention to Baltimore County politics know and have read that along the way there have been certain development projects that gave you heartburn in Towson and you had to work through. Have you evolved on your view on Towson and what it should be and how we should get there?
I think I always supported redeveloping, and I think there's some positions I've been pretty consistent on. 101 York was one. Don, you remember this one, and we were on
I
the
think it's
same page.
one that you and I had more than one discussion about.
Yeah.
Where is 101 York? Tell everybody what it
Okay.
is so we can get a little.
So yeah,
Without
101
me having to
York.
Google it.
Yeah. It's now the Aspen project, but it's a high rise built next to the American Legion on York Road. And a lot of people in Towson believe that you should only have dormitories built on Towson University's campus. This is a project right next to the campus. And I argued that, look, we have to put these students somewhere. They're either going to be on privately built dormitories like this, or they're going to be in the neighborhoods. And we actually were very fortunate that this project got done when it did, because Towson University displaced a lot of students from their dormitories. So those students are living in 101 York this fall, along with Towson Row, which are just precipitously getting finished in time for this population.
Well, we'll talk about that project as well, David, because Towson Rose one, where you had different feelings along the way. And again, you and I, full disclosure, you and I butted heads, and it's okay. We butted heads over Towson Row. Now that
can you give me disclosure on what does butting heads mean? I want it, I don't want it. There is no build half of it, right? I mean,
I'll
literally.
I'll let the councilman go first.
Go ahead.
So I mean, Towson Row is being built more or less across from the library, and it stalled for a while, and then Brian Gibbons came in and basically helped rescue this project. And it's a lot smaller than was originally proposed.
We're actually going to have Brian on, David, to talk about Towson Row and other projects, but go ahead.
And Brian's a super guy. Brian's a great developer, one of the best in Baltimore County. He deserves a lot of credit. I mean, I think where we disagreed was using public money as a grant versus a loan. I still think that should have been more of a loan. But the project's advancing, and it's going to be a positive for Towson.
And Nestor, that's a really interesting yin and yang, push and pull all of the time. And the public has strong feelings about grants to developers. It can be in a variety of ways.
Oh, we've talked about TIFs around here left and right, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And this wasn't a TIF, but there were some taxpayer incentive grants. And the feeling was on our part at the time, both county executive cabinets and then myself, as unfortunately I had to take over that role, was that there was a parking lot there. It was it was a slab of concrete. It was generating no tax revenue whatsoever, and this completed project would revitalize the entire area and contribute to taxes. So, as the councilman's saying, we eventually got there, and there really is. How do you feel, David? I'm just curious. When you look at Towson as a whole, give people a sense of what is happening in Towson. It is the county seat, and what you're optimistic about in terms of Towson.
Oh, I'm very optimistic. Towson it's not only higher education, it's law, it's medicine, it's government. I mean, it's a lot of functions in Towson. Towson would be its own city anywhere else. and it contributes so much to Baltimore County. Um, the student population in Towson is a huge plus for us. It is going to sustain those businesses when other places are just atrophying, quite frankly. We have a lot of, not in addition to the developments that are underway, we have a lot of other good things happening. I mean, Don, you'll appreciate this. The circulator. We've talked about the Towson circulator for 10 years. And
Tell Nestor what that is, Councilman.
yeah, it's a free shuttle. The idea is
We have one of those downtown. Absolutely.
yeah, you got one of those downtown. I think that downtowns, it's had problems because people have viewed that almost like a second bus system, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger to a lot of people. But Towson would have a small circulator. You could ride free. And the idea is, in a place where you can't build more roads, this is how you get people around Towson. So the county executive and the current county executive, Johnny O, to his credit, really helped push this forward. We got some federal money, and it's going to be a reality next summer. And I think it's really going to help things here. We also have some parks that have been built. Don mentioned Radeball Park, Patriot Plaza. We've done some repurposing of cement areas into green areas. So there's a lot of good stuff happening in Towson, a lot of positive things happening in Towson.
Look, I kissed up to Johnny O because of Colgate Elementary a couple weeks ago. So I'm all for, every time I make the turn there on the Cloverleaf off of North Point, where I'm from, my side of the county, things are coming up, So I do love hearing the progress, especially from the folks that are on the street doing this, either fighting for or against zoning. What makes a good project for you in a zoning way? What's something that you get behind that you think this is good? Because you have expressed that if there was already business there, let's do it there instead of ripping up a farm. The guy that owns the farm may think differently, though, right?
I look at a couple of things. I look at the master plan, which is supposed to guide development. I look at community plans. I look at where we can strike compromises with neighborhoods. I look at citizens' inputs. Kind of a bunch of things. I look at the terrain of a property, the geography. Does it make sense here? There's a lot of things that go into these decisions. And you kind of have to weigh all of those. One thing I want to mention, Nestor, one thing is Trade Point Atlantic. Trade Point Atlantic. And Don, your administration, Kevin, Johnny O, there's a lot of criticism about the public money that went to that. But that Trade Point Atlantic and Nestor, that is transforming the East Side.
Yeah, I'm probably
during the recession, it is still doing very well.
Yeah.
And
now, is that something that Republicans fight against 15 years? I mean, I didn't follow it so much, even though for a point of time I was in it when the LNG was, when all of that was there. But I'm going back 15 years ago now. But, I'm trying to envision who's fighting that I don't want business to come here, especially when jobs have obviously – evacuated over the course of a quarter of a century.
Well, the issue, and David, jump in, because there is no project that I'm prouder of, and no effort that in my 7.5 months, that when I look back, I have a real sense of pride of being able to get Kevin's vision to the goal line on that. You can react a little to Nestor's question as well. Nestor, the issue on Trade Point was, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we all shared a vision that we needed Trade Point Atlantic to move forward. The issue became of how we structured the public money. And one of the things we kept saying over and over in the negotiations, and that we never budged from, and then Johnny, if we got it to the 1 foot line, Johnny called the quarterback sneak and got it into the end zone. So I'm always appreciative that County Executive Olszewski finished that job. But none of us ever budged on our belief that whatever deal we cut with Trade Point had to be good for county taxpayers. That's my recollection, David. How about yours?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the deal was we would help lay the groundwork for the infrastructure, get the businesses in so they'd be paying property taxes. And, I look at the Republican Party, back to what we started with. The Republican Party historically has believed in this. Look, it was Lincoln who supported the Transcontinental Railroad. It was Eisenhower who helped build the interstates. The goal of government is sometimes to lay the foundation for economic growth. Infrastructure plays an important role. That is where Baltimore County came in and helped the private businesses flourish at Trade Point Atlantic. And that was a bipartisan vote, 7-0.
Right.
I think, Don, it was one It was
Yeah.
so it was
No,
one
I'm
of the last
agreeing.
things you it was one of the last things you worked on, I think.
It was,
That vote.
but
Yeah.
then to all due credit, it was County Executive Oshevsky and his
Yep.
team, as I said, who got it into the end zone and made sure that we had all the votes to push it
Yes.
forward. I'm
Yes.
very proud of that.
Yep.
Again, if you're just tuning in, we are with Baltimore County 5th District Councilman Republican David Marks, been there since 2010. David, I want to jump back to the comprehensive zoning process for a minute or two, because I like to put faces on things for folks. Give us what was your toughest issue this year, the one that sent you to the roll age bottle, where you said, man, both sides are making good points. I've really got to sort it out. Give our listeners a sense of what that issue was and what made it so tough.
I still haven't decided.
Oh, well,
This
there
one.
you go. Well, then Nestor
Yeah.
loves that. Walk us through. What's the toughest
I have
issue?
a very tough zoning issue dealing with a project called Red Maple Place. It is an affordable housing project proposed in East Towson. We are under an agreement, Don knows this, to provide more affordable housing units. It is the location of this project that is very difficult. It's being proposed in an area that is one of probably the poorer parts of Towson, the historic East Towson. A lot of the neighbors think that it is too big for that parcel. I've asked the developer to shrink the project. The developer is not willing to do so. It is a very tough issue because the county is under an agreement to provide more units. It's a stated goal of this administration, but at the same time, you look at this location and you wonder, look, Towson's a very affluent area. Why is it going here? The answer is because it's part of an overall an affluent census tract, but this is a relatively poor part. This is a really tough zoning issue, and
David,
it's not black and white. It really isn't.
anytime you mention, and Nestor, you probably never met her, but a lot of our listeners who are tuning in certainly have, and the councilman did. You can't mention East Towson without mentioning the mayor, Mrs. Adelaide Bentley, just one of the finest community folks that I ever met, and I think of her often and how special she was. Where does her group, and I'll call her descendants, the people who walk in her shoes, where are they on that particular project?
They're against it. They're very much against it.
So
like I said, it's a tough call, very tough call.
Who are the obviously, and Nestor and I talk about it a lot, and I guess this is what you're struggling with. We need affordable housing throughout this county, David. I think we all agree. I mean, consent decree, no consent decree, no agreement, regardless of the agreement, we need to have affordable places for working families all across this county. Obviously, this fits. How many units is this, David?
56.
56 units. And you would like them to scale it back to what?
I'd like to scale back 40s, low 40s at least.
Now, Nestor likes to be educated all the time on this. Suppose when you go and you have, like you say, you have not decided. If you decide no, you're not going to give them the zoning that allows that project. What happens to that project?
The developer has to change the project, or it could be killed. So that zoning's tremendous power, and this is a very tough decision. It really is.
Very, 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 very interesting. David, what's next for David Marks down the road? You're in your third term. You're a young guy. When you look down the road, what's next for David Marks?
Finishing the third term. This has been this has been a tough term. This has been, and I feel for the county executive. I mean, the county executive, who is, very, very bright, very young person, has a lot of goals, and he got smacked with the coronavirus midway through. And for all of us in public office, it has forced us to not get a lot of our ambitious things done. It's easy to govern during prosperity and very difficult to govern in recession. So the answer to your question, Don, is trying to help lead my constituents through the remainder of this term, trying to avoid tax increases, making sure that we are dealing with public health, public safety, getting as many of our businesses reopened, and then seeing where things are in 2020. 2022. I had always said I would do 3 terms. We'll see where we are in 2022. I'm not going to do this forever.
Is the job still fun? Is the job still fun, David?
In many respects, it is. It is still satisfying. It is tiring at times, but I mean, the neat thing about local government is you see the tangible results of what you do. And Don, Nestor, you understand this. I mean, you see a road, you see a park, you see communities being revitalized.
Colgate Elementary School.
Colgate Elementary School.
Dundalk High School.
Dundalk High School. And Nestor, the changes that are happening in Dundalk, a lot of change, a lot of positive changes. That's the neat thing about local government is the tangible results. So we'll see where we are in 2022.
Dave, we appreciate you coming on, man, and taking some time out. I hope to, I've had beer and food in Towson, Loch Raven Village, Kearney, Oak Crest Village. Haven't been there yet. I've been by there. Fullerton, Perry Hall, and Kingsville. So all along the way. How about that?
What are you watching on? Before we let you go, you're my pop culture guy. What are you watching on Netflix right now that we should all be tuning in on?
Oh, goodness gracious. It'll be some bad 1980s movie you'd rather hear about, right?
You love sharing your movies with your kids, though, don't you, David?
I do. And I try to keep my personal page separate from the political stuff. That's a little bit
I tried that. It all went to hell. So, we're just we are now.
That's a bit frustrating sometimes. But, I really try to separate the two. But it's inevitable. It's going to merge when you're an elected official. So.
What's your favorite? If you could only watch one more movie, David, what would it be? You can only watch one more movie in your life. What's your go-to? What are you going back and watching?
My favorite movie is The Empire Strikes Back. Love The Empire Strikes Back. There you go.
Star Wars guy. All right.
Star Wars.
All right.
Yep. Love that.
I was just thinking about my history in your district, and I'm just first off, my son going to school there and all that. But I'm thinking your district's the place we paraded the Lombardi Trophy up and down Harford Road. When we were at the barn. So all is good. Many listeners.
The barn is now Das Beer Hall. Excellent place.
My best to Scott and everybody over there. For sure.
Yep. Great place.
Hey, take care of yourself.
Thank you.
We'd ship you some Taharka ice cream, but it would melt. But we are going to plug them right now. I'll let you know that, all right?
Very good.
They have this up in the fifth. I know Taharka ice cream, the caramel crunch salted ice cream, caramel ice cream with the chocolate-covered honeycomb toffee. Great guests all along the watch. You got Brandon Scott and Jane Miller, and we are doing amazing things as we are merging WNST with Baltimore Positive all into one place. Make sure you check it out. It's for Republicans. It's for Democrats. It's for county people and city people. Even Oriole and Ravens fans will both like it. Steelers fans probably won't like it too much, but that's okay. It's football season. I am Nestor on behalf of former Baltimore County Executive Don Moeller. Together, we are WNST.net, AM 1570, calm, local, and Baltimore Positive.